All right, hello fellow coder, welcome to this next lesson in our series where we are building a real-world web app from scratch and deploying it to the interwebs using React on the front end, Spring Boot in the back end via Java, and tying it all together with MySQL. Oops, I forgot to say this is part 6 of many. Anyway, so in this one, we're going to be diving into solving two problems, one of which is security, and the other is making it more production ready from the server side of things. So we're going to be leveraging an Nginx server instead of the default React development server that comes up when you do an npm start. So yeah, we'll implement an Nginx web server, and we will try to get a certificate up and running as well. That is the hope. This might go into part 6, or there's already part 6. This might go into part 7 as well. We'll see how it goes. So if that sounds of interest to you, then stick around. All right, so let's dive into the good stuff. The background is that we've already Dockerized everything. We've done a container or a Docker Compose up in part, 4 on localhost. Then from there, we went to part 5, which was deploying that Dockerized stuff and Compose stuff onto a DigitalOcean droplet. So that's now up and running, but what's next? What do we need to do? Well, exactly what I said in the intro, which is it's not secure, so we need to make it secure, and it's not running on a production server. It's running on a development server right now. So our job in this video is to solve those two problems, and I will try my best to do both in this one video, but like I said, it's probably going to go into 2 videos. But hey, that's just the name of the game. So let's flip over to our environment here. Is it this one? Why do I have 2 up and running? What is this? This is just my Windows machine. I can get out of here. This is our droplet. So first problem is we're running an npm start. So we don't actually want to run npm start, right? That is not what we want to do for our front end server. So that's the first thing that we can just tweak is we want to, where is it? Nano into the Dockerfile. There's a hint here. You may have seen this. This is from my other recording of the video. We want to build. We don't want to run. We want to build. Okay. So we're going to run a command called npm run build. Okay. So npm start is what starts up the entire server, the development server, which we do not want. npm run build will build everything such that it creates all the folders that we need for our static application. Remember, React is a single page application framework. What that means is it's a single index HTML file with a bunch of JavaScript that does stuff, right? So those are all static files. Those are all files that can just live on your computer. And what the npm run build command does is it creates those files and it puts them into a build folder. So then that build folder with all those files could be copy and pasted into a web server like Nginx, which is a popular web server. It's fast, lightweight, whatever. And that web server could then serve those files, that build directory. So that's going to be the goal. Create that build directory, copy it over into a web server, an Nginx web server, such that the web server will be the one serving those static files, which would be great. One little tweak I want to make to this workflow, as I had hinted, I don't know how many videos ago, was that all of these files, when we do the npm install and build, it's putting all this stuff on the root of this server, of the Node 17 enabled Alpine Linux container, and to put everything on the root folder is not a great convention. So we want to change the working directory to be something else like /app. You can call this whatever you like. I'll just call it /app. And what this working directory command does is it essentially does a make directory for app, and it will cd into it. Okay, this is equivalent to this. Equivalent to, is that how you spell equivalent? Anyway, sue me if it's not. Don't sue me. that's sort of what this work directory thing does. And then so below this command, this work directory app command, then all of this stuff will be relative to the app folder. So it'll copy everything into, when I say /, it's going to copy everything into the app folder. When I do npm install, it's going to build everything into the app folder. When I do copy everything else, the source file, it's going to copy it into the app folder. And when we do the build, it's going to build it into the app folder. Hopefully that makes sense. Cool. So let's exit out of there. And let's run, how are we gonna do this? Let's do a Docker compose up, and then I'm gonna do build, and I'm gonna run it in the background. So what build does is it forces, because I know I've made a change to the Dockerfile, and I just wanna make sure it does rebuild the image. So I wanna make it rebuild the image, and then I want this all to run in the background while I do something else in the meantime, okay? So that's gonna try to bring up the front end server and everything else as well. And it's probably gonna have to rebuild everything because I just added the work. As soon as I added a step above everything else, it's gonna have to redo all this stuff because it can't do it from cache anymore. Because everything below the change line in a Dockerfile needs to be rerun. So I guess running it in the background is not gonna give me the result that I was hoping for. So it will go and do the npm install and stuff. But I might as well explain now what needs to happen after this. So what needs to happen now is we need to, and I guess I could sort of do that, in a notepad document while we're waiting. Let me just open up a notepad and bring it over here while we're waiting for that to build. What we need to do next is we need to create a web server container, right? In our Docker compose YAML file, okay? So based on our YAML file, again, the YAML file has services, right? And then inside of it, we had the back end that had, stuff here. And then we had the front end, which had more stuff here. And then we had the MySQL instance, right? The MySQL container, I think we called it, with, again, more stuff here. And now what we want to end up with is another container, another service or whatever. So we're going to bring in another service and we're going to call it whatever we like. I'm going to call this web server. Okay. Because that's what we're going to do. We're going to create a web server. From this, we're going to pull in an image. Okay. For all the ones above here, or rather these two, we told it, we have the build files. We have the Docker files ourselves. So we told those two how to build. The MySQL container, we pulled an image from Docker Hub. Okay, and this is exactly the same thing we're going to do here. We're going to pull an image for this web server from Docker Hub. So while this is doing its thing, let's flip over to the interwebs. Let's go to hub.docker.com and find the web server instance. Nginx, that's how you spell it. It is awful. I always forget. My brain always messes up on trying to spell Nginx. Terrible branding. Anyway, whatever. So that is the Nginx official image here that I'm going to click on. So when we go in here, we can grab a version of the Nginx. Now, is there one supported tags and respective Docker file? Is there one that is built on Alpine? Here we go. So there's one built on Alpine here. Let's click on this one and see. That's the actual Docker file. So I want to see where do I want it? I want to go. Oh, right. I want to go to tags. Tags. Right. So these are the tags that I want to look through. I want to find one that has Alpine in it. Can I filter by Alpine? Cool. So Alpine. And I want to stay away from one that might change, constantly. So it's Alpine Perl. I'm actually not sure which one I need to leverage. Alpine. So there's what's the difference between this one? Oh, I guess it's a different version. 1216 versus 121. 1216, this is built on Linux. Look how small this is, right? 11 megabytes. That's so small. Okay, I think this one might work. So let's grab this image and let's plug it into our thing here and get rid of the Docker pull command. Okay, so we're going to pull an image, which is an Nginx image tagged with the version that it is and Alpine, which is the Linux flavor that we're going to be leveraging. So that's going to be the image, and that's what we want to build. Great. Now the web server itself is going to be listening on the internet. So we're going to have to open up some ports here, right? Which ports are we going to open up? Well, port 80 we want to open up because that's how we come in. We want to be able to go and visit the what is it, 137.184 whatever, without typing in a port, right? We just want to do it like this, like a bare, URL like this, right? So to accomplish that, we need to open up port 80 and redirect it internally in the container, probably to port 80. Yes. And I'll show you how this is going to make sense. There's going to be a conflict with this one. You can't see the code here, but this front end, I can sort of put it in here. It has a ports that's listing 80 and routing it to 3000. Okay, and that's not good. You can't have two containers, a front end container listening on port 80, directing to 3000, and another container running on port 80 and redirecting to a different one, right? So basically what we're going to do is we're going to listen on port 80, direct it to port 80, and this one is going to listen, give me change to listen on 3000 and redirect to 3000. And then we're going to have some tomfoolery in the web server config to make this happen properly, okay? We're also going to open up 443. 443 is the SSL port, okay? We won't do anything with that just yet, but that we will be opening it up, okay? So, boom, we were able to finish building our front end server over here. So now I can actually go and mess with my Docker Compose file that we were doing here and actually implement the changes. So here's a Docker Compose. As promised, look at this, front end has port 80 and 3000. As I just said, we're gonna change this to be not 80, but rather 3000. So then if you just leave it like this, then nothing is listening on port 80. Well, like I said, that's where we can bring in another service. We'll bring in our web server. You can call it whatever you like, but I'll call it web server. The image that we're grabbing from is this one. Paste. The ports that we're opening up are an array, so array 80, 80, and another array element of 443 for the SSL ports. Okay, so now I've grabbed everything there. So now I can move this off the screen. Great, so now we've started with that. And I actually can't remember off the top of my head what the other, let me just, for reference sake, bring up my old Docker Compose file so I can reference and make sure I'm not, missing anything. So there is another thing that we need to talk about, and that is more volumes stuff. So for this web server, we're going to need some volumes that we're going to leverage. And these volumes are going to work slightly differently from the named volume that we have here. We have a named, here. We have a named volume here, which is just storing and sharing it with the host. So on the container, it's just sharing this with the host machine only. With these volumes, I want to share it into a specific folder on the host machine. Not that you have to, but I don't know. That's just the example that I saw did it this way. There are 3 volumes that I want to share to get access to, and I'm going to copy those over right now. I could type these out. Last time I did this, I typed it out manually, and then I made a mistake. So let me paste these in. So there's 3 different folders, and I'll explain these folders. One is on the host machine, which is our droplet, under the Nginx configuration directory, and there is a directory that exists right now in this host in our GitHub assignment submission app folder. This does exist as well as this. So these 2 folders already exist, and there is a file in here that we're going to share with this guy here. So our Nginx configuration file, because the Nginx web server needs to be configured for our app, we're going to copy that over to the etc Nginx confdef folder inside of our container, okay? So we're going to copy that over, and then there's some certbot stuff. This certbot stuff comes from the we don't need these yet. It comes from the container that we are going to use to generate the SSL certificate for us, okay? So remember, step one, solve the problem of getting a production-ish ready, friendly web server. Step two is make it SSL encrypted, right? So we'll start with step one, which is, hey, we'll get this web server up and running, which is right here, okay? So this web server service we are getting up and running. We'll come back to the other two volumes, but for now, the web server needs the Nginx configuration file. It's a bit of a mess in there, but hey, cool. So I think that is it for now. I'm just sort of looking back and forth on my screens here to see, is there anything I'm missing? I don't think so. So now when we do another Docker Compose, it is going to try to spin up the web server, okay? Now, before we do that, let's do a nano into, remember I said on the host machine, there's an Nginx folder that has a conf folder that also has a configuration file called nginx.conf. I'm going to look at that file and show you under the hood what's going on. What are we telling this server to do? We're telling the server to listen on port 80. The server name is going to be Coders Campus with a 3. It's a 3 because I actually just happen to own that domain name. So I'm just going to leverage it because I just happen to own it and I'm not using it. So I said, hey, might as well use this here because the server name can't be an IP address. It has to be a domain name. This configuration here will be used with certbot. So certbot is going to try to access this folder structure. It's going to go to our IP address or our server name / this directory, and this directory is going to redirect to this folder on our Linux machine, on our, I shouldn't say Linux machine, on our Nginx container. So the Nginx container is going to have this folder in there, and we'll get to that when we do the certbot stuff. But for now, this will try to redirect from port 80. It's going to try to redirect a 301 redirect to the HTTPS version of this website. So in other words, it's going to say, hey, we're not a regular old unsecured server. We're going to redirect to the actual secured version of our application. Now, this is not going to work right away because well, we don't have an SSL certificate up and running yet. So really we could, I think we could do this, copy this code, copy, oh God, what did I just do? I did a Control C. I don't know did I break something? If I say paste, no. So if I just do location / like this, we'll bring this over here. I'm going to try to instead return, what is it that I do down here? We can ignore all this stuff for now, but I say return, I don't say return, I say try files. Try files URI. Let me say try files. Now, I'm not an expert here, guys. I am just shooting from the hip. Try files URI. And then I think URI, and then I think it needs like maybe index.html with a semicolon, I think. Okay, we'll give that a shot and see if this works. So I'll comment out all of this stuff because we don't need this stuff yet. We will come back to that when we actually have our SSL certificate in our possession. Like once we've actually generated the SSL certificate, then we can do that stuff, or this stuff that I'm commenting out. So to keep things simple, we just have a plain old server. Ooh, and then you can't have two location files here or folder. So all this does is it says, hey, if there's something coming from certbot, go to this folder. Otherwise, try and serve index.html. Okay, so that's the first step. Let's save it. Now this is not going to actually work because we also need to copy some files around, and I think that is in our build. If you remember, for our build for our folder. If I go back to the Docker Compose, the volumes that we're sharing here, I believe we have to share another volume. Is that how we do it? Is that how I did it? I don't see that it's doing that. How did I make this work? Because we need to serve the files. We need to share the files from the build folder in the app, the React app needs to share its files with the Nginx www. So I think I'm missing something here, which is sharing that stuff, which I forget what the folder is. So let me just pause and do some research. All right, so I've done my research and got a haircut in the process, and came to the conclusion that yes, we need volumes to share data between the containers. Now, this is actually not the greatest way to do things now that I've done my research in terms of having two separate containers. So you can do this all in one container, but for now, for the sake of this version of everything, I'll just show you how to do this in case you need to know how to do this in the future, and then we'll sort of do some refactoring on this code to make things slightly better, and I'll explain the refactoring in the next video. But for this one, for our web server, I added in the volumes, I added something called web data. So I gave it a name, and this points to the user share Nginx HTML folder. So user share Nginx HTML is where the publicly accessible Nginx files are usually stored, right? So that's sort of where you want to put them. So what we do is on the web server, we just sort of expose that folder as the web data under the web data name. So we assign a variable called web data, and it points to this folder. And this is a read-only folder because this is not where we need to modify the files right on the web server. So yes, that's good. And the place where we need to make it read write is in here, right? So, oh, sorry, that's MySQL container in here. So on the front end, this is where we build our files from the React app. So the React app will create all the static files, all the JavaScript, all the indexed HTML, all that stuff, the CSS, and that is built into the app build folder. So do you see what we're doing here? We're taking web data, which is the same name as down here, web data. These two things are the same. And we're saying, hey, take it from the app build folder on the front end container, which is where the React app is built. Share it with web data. And then over here, web data will share it with this folder, which is on the in the container itself. So on the host, it's web data on the host, and then this is on the container. App build is where we sort of copy from, and it will sort of paste into, so to speak, here. So that's how we share the files between those two containers. Again, this can be refactored to make it simpler, but we'll get there. Also, since we added an alias here or a variable name, we need to declare that down here in the volume section, just like we did for DB data, which is on the MySQL container right here. Same thing. We declared a name here for this volume, so we need to put both of them at the bottom here. So that's pretty much, I think, the only changes that I made to the actual server itself. Oh, well, to the, I should say, Docker Compose file. But then there were some problems with the server getting it up and running. So I had to make changes to the Nginx config file. So I'm going to modify that config file and show you the changes I had to make. So these were all the same. What I added here was I added this location, which is the root. So anything on the root will look at the user share Nginx HTML. Does that folder looks familiar to you? This is the folder that we made. We assigned the variable name to, the volume variable name, for the web server instance. And then again, I'm not an expert here, but this is just, I believe, just saying, hey, when you go to this location, anything in this location and further, so any path you get at all, look in this folder and try to grab files from it, specifically the index file, because that's how React works. It all comes back to the index HTML file. So that's kind of what we're doing, is we're forcing it to look at the index file for everything, except for this location. Well, and this location. Oops. Oh no, I accidentally pasted this in. Okay. I select a lot of stuff and then that automatically copies it. There. Okay. So this is in here. So this is where, when we do our certbot in the next video, we'll go over that. So everything else other than /API will go here. So it'll try to render the index HTML file, unless we go to the API folder, or API path, I should say. So if there's an API path, the API, that's where you want to go to the backend. So we do something called proxy pass, which passes the request onto the backend server. In other words, the Java web app. So it passes this along to Tomcat, because that's going to be the web app that's running, the web server that's running, I should say, for our Java application. So basically, anything in API, send it to the backend. Anything that's a normal path, just try to render it into the index HTML file. And anything for the certbot, well, we'll point that into the certbot folder, but that's for later. And then everything else is commented out. So with that in mind, with all those settings in mind, all those changes that I made, if I do a Docker compose down to bring everything down, dun 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 dun, dun. Now we can do Docker compose up. And I don't think I made any changes, but I'll do a build as well. Why not? And then I did a -D so that it runs in the background. Although I'll show you one more trick that I haven't shown you yet, which is what happens if you run it in the background, but you still want to see what's going on with all the logs. You can say Docker compose logs. Okay. If you do this, you'll get a quick snapshot of what's happened in the logs, but it won't be tailing the log, right? It won't be following along with the log. You see, I'm back to the shell command or the bash command, whatever you want to call that. If you want to tail the log or follow along with the log, you do -F to follow, and then you'll see it'll stay in the log. See, I don't have that. You see, it's following the logs, right? So that's kind of the best of both worlds, right? You can run it in the background with the -D. When you do Docker compose up -D, it runs it in the background, and then you can do the Docker compose logs -F to follow. And then if we come here to our app, you can refresh the 137, 184, and boom, there we go. We have the front end up. You can say Trevor log in, and then this login sent a message to the back end, to the Java server. And then as you can see, the back end, you have all the selects and stuff like that, right? So we have a working app, an entirely working app with the more production ready server, which is the Nginx server. And now we see how, all of that is set up. Having said that, there's definitely a tweak we can make to make this a bit more efficient. We can use 3 containers instead of 4. Again, it works like this. It's just we're kind of spinning up 4 containers. So this is really a matter of optimization, the next step to optimize. So we'll look at that in the next video, and we will hopefully have time to also look into the certification stuff. I'll try to get both done in the same video. So having said that, please do give this a thumbs up. Again, it helps with the YouTube algorithm and appeasing those algorithm gods. I am not worthy. Anyway, so please do give it a like and subscribe if you like to above my face. And thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate it. Until next time, take care, happy learning, and bye for now.